Good day and welcome to A Place Called Through. I am your host, Patricia Wade Goings, and we broadcast live from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. A lot of times people call in, write us, and ask us, what is this place called through? The answer is everybody is going through something. Your story may be similar, it may be even different, but together we are all going through. The thing is that once you go through and you're coming through and you're getting through, that's what makes the difference for you. So today, we are so honored to have with our guest, Miss Geri Mason, who's going to share her story and her testimony as a survivor of breast cancer. I want to give you just a little bit of information here about breast cancer. Statistics now show that in the year of 2020, there were 684,996 deaths as a result of breast cancer globally. In 2022, it is estimated now that at least 43,250 women and 530 men will die, sadly, of breast cancer. Alarming facts. So today we're here and we're going to learn a little bit more about Survivor and what it's like when you're going through this process. So again, I am Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings, the host of A Place Called Through, where we're here to encourage you and to inspire you. And, we appreciate your donations, but we ask you, if you haven't had that chance to sow into this ministry, please do so by visiting us at wytv7.org. Again, we welcome to you today, Ms. Mason, to share your story with us here on A Place Called Through. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're so honored that you had the time today to come and just share with us briefly about breast cancer and surviving. It's a horrific process when you go to the doctor, and once you've gotten your exam, your mammogram, and, you're optimistic. Oh, not me. Oh, no, we're not going to have this come up. And when that doctor comes into the room and he says to you, I'm sorry to let you know that, okay, we found cancer. What was it like for you?
For me, I found my own lump on Labor Day weekend. And then when I went to the doctor, he suggested that I wait until my cycle had ran, because that might have been part of the problem, because I was 30 years old. And back then, people at 30 years old really didn't have breast cancer. And then when I went back the second time, he said, okay, well, let's give it a couple more weeks. He still didn't think it could be anything major. And the third time he decided to do a biopsy. And that's when he announced that I had breast cancer. And of course, my first thought was, why me? And then I immediately said, why not me? And I started to change my life after that.
And so when you got to that point that you were saying, why not me? Was it because you just believed, or were you just optimistic or hopeful that it wasn't really going to be you?
He had already told me that it is breast cancer. And my first thought when he told me that was, why me? But immediately I flipped it, because I was thinking, if I'm going to have this disease, then I need to figure out how to turn it into something positive. So I said, why not me? Would I want somebody else to have it instead? Would I think of another person that I would prefer to give it to rather than me? So let's see how we can make this into something positive.
And so as you go through this process of the treatments and, the doctors working with you. I'm a breast cancer survivor as well, 7 years and counting. And so that process is horrific alone when you've gotten that diagnosis. But then when it comes down to the treatment times, because I remember the nurse actually telling me, she was like, Pat, you just look like you're so lost, like you're just really spaced out, because I was looking at the TV in the waiting room, but I really wasn't seeing it. So what was your experience like?
My experience was totally different than anybody that I've ever talked to, because 36 years ago, I don't even know what kind of chemo they gave you or anything, but I had chemo and radiation for 6 months. I had it every day for 6 months, chemo and radiation. And what I did is I went to work in the morning and I left work early so that if I did get sick or anything, that I would be able to go home directly after the chemo and the radiation. And I never had any problems whatsoever. And I did not lose my hair. So I don't know what they did back then that they're not doing today.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, you said 30 some years ago, yes, the treatments and the process was much different, because from then they were still trying to figure out this thing called breast cancer. So they really just didn't know what to do. My mother passed away 20 something years ago from breast cancer, and they didn't know then what to do. And when the medical team called me in, they were like, well, Miss Pat, you need to sit down to see this. And the cancer had totally eaten the breast away. And so I saw firsthand what it looks like. I know, what she experienced, but it was so far gone, it had to metastasize. There was nothing that they could do. And so this is a horrific process, once you've gotten the diagnosis. And again, if you're fortunate enough to go through the treatment, then again, for me, yes, I did lose some of my hair, but thank God it did grow back. But that was horrific, getting dressed for church one Sunday morning and unrolling my hair, and lock by lock, each curl fell to the floor. So I know what that's like. But you know what? I pressed my way on and I put down a serious praise that Sunday. I went on to church anyway. So let's move, because we're fast forwarding now to, you've gotten through this process. You've already been diagnosed. You have now had to accept this diagnosis, and, you've gone through whatever treatment and the exams. So now you're okay. I have this thought. Why not me? Who can I share this with? Who can I tell? Where did you go after that? What was going on?
After that, matter of fact, it was only 2 years after I had been diagnosed that I decided to share my story with the newspaper, a local newspaper. And they ran the story and they put me on the cover, and people started calling me and asking me to speak and share my story at churches and conventions and women's conferences and at teenage homes where they had pregnant teenagers. And that is what started Geri Speak, because I had so much fun sharing my story that when the phone stopped ringing, I was like, I really like sharing my story. So I created Geri Speak in order to continue telling the story. And to
let me ask.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And to update people every year, because once I got a following and I started telling my story and creating my own events, then people came back every year to find out how I was doing.
So let me ask you, how would you encourage a young teenager now who just found out that she had breast cancer?
As far as a young teenager?
Well, not a teenager, a younger woman, I guess early age person.
Mainly what I do when I meet people who are survivors of breast cancer, no matter how short or how long the time is for them, I tell them that I am a living testimony that you don't have to die because of that. Because when the doctor first told me, he said, we got to get past the first 5 years before you're going to be totally out of the way. And that you have, that you're going to be okay. And I was like, so for the first 5 years, I kept thinking, Lord, just let me live 5 years. And then I lived 5 and I said, just let me live 10. And after a while, I realized I was just basically looking forward to dying. And I switched it up and said, no, I'm gonna look forward to living. And I just stopped counting altogether.
And I know that you had mentioned to me earlier when we were talking about your faith. There came a point where not only was your faith tried because of the situation, but thereafter, your faith grew even stronger in who you believed in and what you believed in.
Exactly. Because when I got past the 5 years, I prayed the whole first 5 years, Lord, please let me survive. May my life be a testimony. And so in that process of asking him to let me live and show me how to make my life a testimony, I realized how much he was taking care of me, not just my body, but emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, everything about my life changed. It's like I bought my first house when I was 32 years old. I had another child when I was 32 years old. Things just kept falling in place for me. And I was still a single parent at the time. So I was a single parent at the time that I was diagnosed.
And that's amazing, because you're not only, dealing with the fact that you're a single parent, but you're also trying to process where do you go moving on into the next segment, into the next phase of your life now, because you're an overcomer. And through this factor, now you are now able to share that part of your life with others to inspire them as well. And so, in encouraging someone who is at this place called through, the unknown part, because so many people don't know about breast cancer. They don't know, the facts, as we read earlier, about so many people dying, and inclusive of even men dying from breast cancer. So, we want to put out that information that there is help available. The American Cancer Society, Cancer Network, get those resources, get the help. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with you, Ms. Mason, to continue talking about your story, about breast cancer. So stay tuned. We'll be right back to A Place Called Through, where I am your host, Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings, and we'll be right back momentarily.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
And I am your host, once again, Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings, the host of A Place Called Through, broadcasted from WYTV7, that is Community Broadcasters Network. We're here today where Ms. Geri Mason is sharing her story, the positive, turning a negative situation into a positive, now empowering and encouraging others who are going through breast cancer, as well as those survivors. We read earlier about the statistics that, it's often said that women get breast cancer, but it's also known that men also too can get breast cancer. So we want to continue talking to her as she's empowering us today with her other side of through. As we stated before, you're going through and getting through is what makes the difference. So Ms. Mason, now that you've gone through all of this and you're now out here helping to empower other women, who are facing this ultimate task of how do I get through? Because when you get that diagnosis of it is cancer, that fear automatically kicks in. It seems as though it's just an automatic thing where, okay, the natural thing about you is to fear, and where panic sets in. So how do you, lift someone's spirits up that maybe even yesterday or today that just got that diagnosis? How do you tell them to process that fear factor about being diagnosed?
If you just got the diagnosis, a couple of days ago, there's not too many things that anybody can tell you, but one of the things that I try to impress upon people is let's look outside the picture frame. Don't just look at the picture that you see. Right now, the only picture you see is breast cancer, but there's a bigger picture that's going on outside the frame. And so what you need to do is figure out how you're going to frame the breast cancer inside the frame, along with everything else that's going on in your life, and how you're going to make it a blessing to yourself and also to others. Because the more I share my story, the more other people will feel confident that they can move forward also, and they can fight this disease. And it's not a death sentence. That's the main thing that I try to impress upon people. It is not a death sentence. Positive attitude, eating right, a whole bunch of things can help you survive this disease. And I did all of those.
And that was one thing that I was told by the nurses as well, too, that, it's now time to make that choice in what you're eating. And, I did it for a while, and I'll be honest, it was like, okay, whatever, nothing happened. So I just kept it moving. But now I'm learning that, yes, what you eat and how you exercise and take care of yourself will make the difference for you in terms of survivorship. And so you have to own that survivorship and say, oh, yes, I am going to be, and I am a survivor. You have to mentally process it as well as physically processing it. And so we want to go back to that fact about, your faith, because we're not just born with this overwhelming feeling of faith and trusting in God and knowing who he is. And so even though it's taught to us, early in life, talk to us a little bit, if you will, about that factor where your faith just escalated so till you became so empowered in faith. And now there's another movement, which we mentioned earlier, where you're actually helping the next person get through. So how do you describe your faith walk?
My faith walk is basically, I mean, at this particular point in my life, there isn't anything that I do that I don't take to God first. Of course, at 32 years old, 30 years old, a couple of years after being diagnosed, I was still, like, as they say, riding it, riding the rail, up and down, seesawing. Some things I gave to God and some things I didn't. I still wanted to handle myself. And, and being married 3 times, that goes to show you that, I was trying to handle it myself. But now I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, God, what you have for me is for me. I'm not going to go searching for it. I'm not going to go fighting for it in no area of my life. I don't do it financially. I don't do it mentally. I don't do it with relationships, male relationships or anything. If there's something for me that you have for me, Lord, then I will wait until you give it to me. I'm not fighting for it because he said in his word, I don't know the verses, that he is not a God of chaos. So, most of the time I know when I'm on the right path because it's just so smooth. If it starts to get chaotic, then I'm like, no, God's not in this.
And I believe that as well, too, that when things go chaotically or when things, when there's confusion and it's not coming together, then I'm like, not God's will, that's not what he has for me. That's not the way he wants it to go. Because your relationship with God, he is not a God that causes confusion, he's a loving God. And so our faith is just that. It's a walk of faith and it's a walk of love, because God loves us and we love him. So because of this love, you are now, strengthened by what you have already endured. And your ultimate goal is to continue, I'm sure, to inspire other women, with your story as you travel along to lift their spirits up. Because like I said earlier, this is not a very easy walk. This is one of the most challenging walks, I believe, that a woman could go through. And, the statistics again show it. It says here, breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among American women. Wow. In 2022, it was estimated that about 30% of newly diagnosed cancers in women will be what? Breast cancer. Breast cancer became the most common cancer globally as of 2021 and accounting for 12% of all new annual cases of cancer worldwide. So, we still see the alarm. It's still sounding out that, yes, we have some serious situations going here. And for more information about breast cancers, please visit the website breastcancer.org or go to the local American Cancer Society to get that information. Go to your health departments, talk to your physicians. We encourage you, women, get those mammograms. It is life-saving. So please make sure you follow through with those things. It's for your health and for your life. And if not, it will be life worthwhile for someone else. So encourage someone else to follow through with those processes. So, like we say, these numbers are steady increasing and, the alarm has been sounded. So as an advocate for breast cancer, in our getting ready to conclude this today, what is that final piece that you would like to say about what you're doing? We have roughly about a minute and a half to talk about what you're doing, how you're encouraging, and what is that final piece that you would like to share with someone who's going through?
I think, well, before we get to someone who's going through, I think one thing that we failed to mention is how important it is for self-examination, the breast self-examination, because that's how I found my lump. So with that being said, what I'm doing to encourage people, I am writing. I'm an author of 6 books. I'm also doing speaking engagements. Whenever somebody called me and asked me to come and speak, no matter where it is, no place is too small, no place is too far a distance away. And I also do it on my blogs and my website. So it's always something positive going on in my life, and also on social media doing lives.
And so if someone wanted to reach out to you, is there an email address or a phone number that they can reach out to you?
Everything is Geri Speak. Geri@gerispeak.com is my email address.
And so they can reach out to you if they want you to, speak to you about being a survivor and what you've gone through, and just maybe, just for that word of encouragement.
Right.
Well, we certainly want to thank you for sharing what you have been able to share with us in this time like today here on A Place Called Through. Remember, as you've heard it here, do that self-exam, check yourself, do it regularly. Go to your doctor, talk, go to the clinics in your area, go online. As we always say, you can Google almost anything now. So, do the research. As you heard, those numbers are going up. Ms. Mason, I wholeheartedly thank you so much for being my guest here today on A Place Called Through, where again, we do broadcast from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. I've been your host today, Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings. And if you like this story and others, and you want to share your testimony and your story, hey, reach out to me in area code of 843-608-9744 or 843, and the number is 812-1958. Better yet, send me an email, pgoingswp@gmail.com. Be sure to visit my website for updates and also on my prayer call, or just to contact me at www.willpowerthecalltoriseabove.org. Once again, I thank you for being my guest and have a wonderful day. Blessings and love.
My pleasure.